You know what's crazy? Most people aren't stuck because they lack potential. They're stuck because they're terrified to let go of the very thing that's drowning them. The moment you release what's killing your growth is the moment you become unstoppable. So if you're scared to let go, good. That fear is the doorway to your next level. Letting go isn't weakness. It's an act of radical strength that most people avoid because it forces them to confront the truth about where they are and where they want to be. We cling to what's familiar because familiarity feels like control, even when it's quietly suffocating our potential. The job that drains you, the relationship that limits you, the habits that keep you stagnant. These things feel safe because they're predictable, not because they're right for you. Growth never happens in comfort, and comfort never produces the person you're trying to become. When you choose to let go, you're choosing to disrupt the pattern that's been holding you back and create the space for something far greater to replace it. This isn't about being reckless, it's about being brutally honest with yourself. You have to look at your life and admit what no longer aligns with your future, even if it once meant everything to you. That's the kind of self-respect most people will never practice. Letting go becomes a strategic advantage because it frees your energy, your clarity, and your capacity for what actually matters. The truth is that most people stay stuck not because they lack talent or opportunity, but because they refuse to release the things that drain them. They carry weight that was never meant to be dragged into the next chapter. Leila Hormozi's philosophy emphasizes that the willingness to let go is what separates the people who grow from the people who repeat the same year of life over and over. Letting go isn't an emotional meltdown. It's a calculated decision rooted in self-awareness. You identify what's no longer serving your mission, and you choose to detach even when your feelings say otherwise. That level of decisiveness builds power. It creates a sense of inner authority that you can't develop if you're always negotiating with your past. The moment you let go, you regain the energy that's been trapped in things you've outgrown, and it becomes fuel for the next stage of your evolution. It's easy to believe that holding on makes you resilient, but sometimes holding on just makes you stuck. Strength is not measured by how long you can endure something that breaks you down. Strength is measured by your willingness to walk away from what limits you. People stay attached to things because they believe letting go means losing a part of themselves. But often, the version of you that's clinging is the version that's outdated. To grow, you have to be willing to shed identities the same way a snake sheds skin. It's uncomfortable, but necessary. When you release something familiar, you're not losing stability, you're gaining alignment. Every time you let go of something that no longer fits, you reinforce the identity of someone who chooses growth over comfort. And that identity is unstoppable because it's not defined by attachment. It's defined by intention. Letting go forces you to confront your patterns, your fears, and the stories you tell yourself about who you think you have to be. Most people don't let go because it exposes the gap between their current reality and their desired future. That gap is uncomfortable, and discomfort makes people retreat back into old habits. But Leila's approach is grounded in facing discomfort head on. You don't run from the pain of change, you use it as data. You observe what you feel, but you don't let feelings dictate your decisions. This mindset builds emotional discipline. It trains you to separate what you want long-term from what you feel short-term. When you operate from that place, letting go becomes a logical step, not an emotional crisis. You stop fearing the unknown and start trusting your ability to build something better. The moment you let go of what drains your energy, your mind becomes clearer and your actions become sharper. You start noticing opportunities that were previously blocked by attachment. The emotional weight that once slowed you down gets replaced by a sense of momentum. You start operating with a level of internal freedom that makes you more creative, more strategic, and more capable of making high-quality decisions. Letting go is not about subtraction, it's about addition through removal. It's about clearing the noise so you can hear your intuition. It's about releasing the past so you can step fully into the future you're committed to creating. And once you experience that clarity, you understand why letting go is not a loss, it's leverage. Most people underestimate the power of letting go because they focus on what they're losing instead of what they're gaining. But the gains are where transformation happens. You gain time. You gain emotional capacity. You gain mental space. You gain the ability to focus on what actually moves your life forward. And the more you practice letting go, the more you start trusting yourself to handle what comes next. Yourself. Confidence grows because it's no longer built on attachment. It's built on adaptability. You realize you don't need to cling to anything to feel secure because you've learned to rely on your ability to rebuild, redirect, and rise. That is the essence of becoming unstoppable, not the absence of loss, but the mastery of release. Your old identity is the greatest limitation you'll ever face because it's built from outdated beliefs, past experiences, and assumptions that no longer match who you want to become. Most people try to upgrade their lives without upgrading the identity that drives their decisions, and that mismatch creates frustration. You can set bigger goals, adopt new habits, or build new routines. But if you're still operating from the identity that prioritizes comfort over growth, you'll sabotage yourself. Leila Hormozi often emphasizes how becoming your next level self requires shedding the version of you that's attached to the past. That means letting go of the personality traits you cling to for validation and the stories you tell yourself about why you can't change. Identity isn't fixed, it's a choice. And choosing a new one demands the courage to release the old. When you accept that your old identity can't take you where you want to go, you free yourself from pretending that the past defines your future. That shift is the foundation for transformation and the catalyst for extraordinary growth. People stay stuck because they protect their old identity like it's a part of their survival, even when it's the very thing holding them back. You cling to the belief that you're not confident, not disciplined, or not capable because it's familiar, not because it's true. Familiar identities feel safe because they allow you to avoid responsibility for growth. But your next level demands that you abandon the identity that keeps you small. Leila's approach is rooted in personal ownership. If the identity you hold no longer aligns with your ambitions, then it's your responsibility to upgrade it. That upgrade doesn't happen through wishful thinking. It happens through deliberate decisions and repeated actions. You build a new identity by behaving like the person you want to become long before you feel like you've earned the title. Letting go of your old self isn't a loss. It's a strategic move that allows you to align your actions with the future you want. There's a point in your journey where holding onto your old identity becomes more painful than evolving into a new one. It shows up in internal conflict, the urge to grow colliding with the fear of outgrowing the life you know. That resistance is a sign you're on the edge of transformation. When Leila talks about leveling up, she describes identity as a container. The container you built for yourself years ago can't hold who you're trying to become now. To strengthen that container, you must release the beliefs that were built from past limitations. This means letting go of the identity shaped by insecurity, scarcity, or the desire to please others. You stop defining yourself by who you were and start defining yourself by the goals and standards you're committed to now. The moment you let go of the version of yourself that's attached to old expectations, you create space for the version that's aligned with your true potential. That space becomes the ground where your new identity is built. Becoming your next level self requires emotional honesty, and most people avoid that because honesty forces them to admit they've outgrown their old story. You have to confront the excuses that kept you comfortable and the beliefs that kept you predictable. You have to face the truth that the identity you've been protecting may be the very thing preventing you from becoming who you know you can be. Leila's style is direct. Growth requires telling yourself the truth even when it's uncomfortable. And the truth is that your old identity was formed to solve old problems, not new ones. You can't become unstoppable while clinging to a version of yourself built for survival mode. You have to shift into a creator identity, someone who makes decisions based on vision, not fear. This shift happens when you stop letting the past define your capabilities and start letting your future define your actions. That's when identity becomes a tool instead of a trap. When you release the identity you've outgrown, your entire perspective changes. You start seeing opportunities where you once saw obstacles because your mind is no longer filtered through outdated limitations. Your choices become more aligned, your habits more intentional, and your goals more realistic because they're built on who you're becoming, not who you used to be. Letting go of your old identity gives you access to a higher level of confidence, one that isn't built on ego but on alignment. You realize you don't need permission to evolve, you only need commitment. As you adopt new standards, your environment, relationships, and actions begin to shift to support your new identity. And with each aligned decision, you reinforce the truth that your identity is not a prison. It's your greatest asset. When you embrace that power, you become someone who doesn't wait for change but creates it from the inside out. Emotional discipline is the difference between people who react to life and people who direct it, and it becomes a superpower when you're on a path of growth. Most people stay attached to what hurts them because their emotions dictate their decisions instead of their intentions. They choose comfort over clarity, familiarity over progress, and validation over truth because it feels easier in the moment. But easy doesn't build a life you're proud of, and Leila Hormozi's philosophy makes that brutally clear. Emotional discipline isn't about suppressing feelings, but about managing them so they don't become the reason you stop. It's choosing your future self over your current discomfort every single time. When you let go of emotional attachment, you stop making decisions from insecurity and start making them from alignment. You begin to see that short-term pain is often the price of long-term freedom, and once you understand this, your entire standard for decision-making changes. Letting go requires emotional courage because it forces you to step into uncertainty without letting fear dictate your choices. Most people avoid this because uncertainty triggers survival instincts that push them back into what feels predictable. They stay in draining situations because the discomfort they know feels safer than the discomfort they don't. But emotional discipline teaches you to confront the unknown with intention instead of avoidance. It teaches you to see fear as a signal, not a stop sign. Leila often talks about how leadership begins with leading yourself, and you cannot lead yourself if you're controlled by emotional impulses. When you detach from emotional narratives, you become more objective, more strategic, and more capable of choosing what's right instead of what's comfortable. You stop using feelings as excuses and start using them as information. And that shift is what makes letting go not just possible but powerful. People misunderstand emotional discipline as numbness, but it's the exact opposite. It's the ability to feel deeply without allowing those feelings to derail your progress. It's accepting that emotions are real but not always accurate, and it's your responsibility to discern the difference. Emotional attachment clouds judgment, making you hold onto relationships, habits, and identities that no longer serve you. You convince yourself that pain equals meaning, so you stay loyal to things that drain you. But discipline allows you to separate emotional noise from personal truth. It helps you evaluate what's actually aligned with your future instead of what simply feels good in the moment. This clarity is what allows you to release what's misaligned without guilt or regret. You let go not because you don't care, but because you care more about who you're becoming. Every major transformation requires emotional discipline because it forces you to act in alignment with your highest self, even when your feelings argue for the lowest one. There will always be a part of you that wants to cling to the familiar, and there will always be a part of you that fears stepping into something new. Without discipline, the fearful part wins, but with discipline, your vision leads. Leila's no-nonsense approach emphasizes that discipline isn't about being harsh with yourself, it's about being honest. Honest about what's holding you back, honest about what you've outgrown, honest about the standards you need to raise. When you operate from this level of honesty, your decisions become cleaner, your boundaries stronger, and your path forward clearer. And clarity is what gives you the strength to let go without looking back. When emotional discipline becomes your default, you stop letting temporary emotions sabotage permanent progress. You start making choices that reflect your long-term goals instead of your short-term impulses. You create distance between reaction and response, which gives you the power to act intentionally. Emotionally disciplined people don't stay stuck because they refuse to let feelings anchor them to places they've outgrown. They let go with purpose, not panic. They trust themselves to rebuild better than what they released. And because of that trust, they become unstoppable, not because they avoid emotions, but because they master them. What you release determines what you rise into, because your capacity is shaped by the space you create for new possibilities to enter your life. Most people chase growth while clinging to the very things that limit them and then wonder why they feel stuck. Leila Hormozi often says that success is just as much about subtraction as it is about addition, and she's right. You can't build a powerful future while holding onto relationships, habits, or beliefs that drain your energy. When you release what no longer aligns with your goals, you reclaim the mental bandwidth you didn't even know you lost. You begin to think more clearly, act more decisively, and move with a confidence that comes from alignment. Letting go becomes less about loss and more about making room for the version of you that's ready to emerge. It becomes a conscious act of elevating your standards and refusing to settle for anything below them. This shift does not happen by accident. It happens because you courageously choose to remove what limits you. And that choice becomes the foundation for the unstoppable momentum that follows. Every time you let go of something that drains you, you strengthen the identity of someone who creates their life intentionally. You stop living in reaction to circumstances and start living in alignment with who you want to become. This alignment sharpens your focus because your decisions are no longer influenced by guilt, fear, or obligation. You stop giving energy to situations that pull you backward and start investing in opportunities that push you forward. Letting go teaches you that freedom doesn't come from control in everything. It comes from releasing what controls you. It frees you from old narratives that kept you believing you were stuck when you were really just choosing familiarity. Leila's philosophy encourages a no-nonsense approach to this process. If it doesn't serve your goals, it doesn't stay. That level of clarity is what allows you to rise into your potential with power instead of hesitation. You stop stepping into your future and begin walking into it with intention. And with each step, you prove to yourself that you are capable of more than you once believed. As you release the weights you've been carrying, you begin to realize how much they were slowing you down. Not every weight is obvious. Some come disguised as comfort, loyalty, or responsibility. But comfort that keeps you small is not comfort. It is a cage wrapped in softness. Loyalty to what no longer grows you is not loyalty. It is self-betrayal with a polite excuse. Responsibility that demands you shrink yourself is not responsibility. It is fear wearing a mask. Letting go requires you to distinguish between what supports you and what suffocates you. And once you learn that distinction, the idea of holding on becomes far harder than the act of letting go. You begin to trust that your life will expand the moment you make room for it to do so. You learn that emptiness is not something to fear, but something to fill with purpose. And that realization becomes the point where transformation truly begins. Your environment, your relationships, and your internal beliefs all shift as you rise into a higher version of yourself. People who once matched your energy may no longer match your direction, and that's okay. Letting go of them doesn't make you cold, it makes you conscious. It shows that you value where you're going more than where you've been. As you release misaligned connections, you attract relationships that support your growth instead of resisting it. As you release limiting beliefs, You adopt a mindset that strengthens your decisions instead of paralyzing them. As you release outdated habits, you build routines that reflect the standards you want to live by. Letting go becomes a filtering system that removes what blocks your progress, and what remains are the people, choices, and opportunities that elevate you. This elevation becomes proof that the act of releasing was never a loss, it was an upgrade. In the end, letting go becomes the very thing that propels you into a life that once felt out of reach. It teaches you that growth requires courage, clarity, and the willingness to choose your future over your familiarity. You learn that you are not meant to carry everything. You were meant to choose wisely what you carry forward. And as you rise into your next level, you begin to understand that every ending you embraced created space for a greater beginning. You realize that letting go didn't break you, it built you. It made you sharper, stronger, and more aligned with your mission. It transformed your pain into purpose and your uncertainty into confidence. And it proved that the moment you stop holding on to what's holding you back, you become unstoppable. Because sometimes the most powerful step you'll ever take is the one where you finally let go. And in letting go, you rise into the life you were always meant to live.